Hey everybody, this is Fernando from the Rollback Podcast, and today is Wednesday. And like every Wednesday, we are gonna look back at some movies that we have watched before and we might have forgotten about. And one of my personal favorites, like all the movies that I've pretty much done on this podcast, I'm doing It, Chapter 1, the one that came out in 2017, not that piece of shit miniseries that came out in the 90s. So, let's get on with the podcast. Alright, people, let's get down to brass tacks here. We all know that It Chapter 1 was probably, let's say it's a surprise hit. I remember when the trailer came out, I wasn't too big on the movie. I was just like, it looks kind of stupid. But eventually I got talked into watching it by my friends who ultimately liked it from the trailer on. And when I saw it, I was just like, holy shit, this is a really good fucking movie. And I don't just mean by horror movie standards, because I feel like there's a different standard when it comes to horror movies and just movies in general. Like with this movie, while I understand it's a horror movie, and the ultimate thing about horror movies is that they're meant to scare you. They're meant to elicit some sort of fear in you, but also to elicit some sort of adrenaline response. And I felt an adrenaline response in this movie, but not so much fear. When I saw this movie the first time in theaters, there wasn't really any particular part where I was like, oh shit, like that's scary, like at all. And I think the only part that I jumped in this movie, the first time I saw it, was the projector scene when he pops out of the screen. I think that's like the only spot. Other than that, like everything else I was completely cool with. And I remember talking about this with my friends after the movie, and I want to say that you can I don't want to say blame, but you can attribute that lack of fear from Stranger Things. And I know, like, I'll go off on a tangent on Stranger Things, one of my favorite shows, yada, yada, yada. But, hear me out. I don't want to sound crazy. So, the reason I'm saying is that it reminds me of Stranger Things because it's very similar. It's a group of kids growing up in the 80s battling some monster who is an interdimensional being that's killing children. And it's the same type of deal in each part. Even has one of the same fucking kids in Wolfhard, who plays Mike in Stranger Things and plays Richie in this one. So it's kind of hard to like separate the two. But I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm saying it's a good thing. I think it helps this movie a lot because before this movie, all we had was that really campy, dorky, fucking piece of shit 90s miniseries. And I remember that scared the crap out of me as a kid. And when I rewatched it, I was like, how in the hell was I ever scared of this? This thing isn't scary at all. At all. So, when this movie came out, we all know how it is with Hollywood and remakes, so naturally I was a little skeptical at first because, remakes, sometimes they just get annoying. And at this point, I was just like, oh man, they're remaking a horror movie, and at this point, horror movie remakes haven't been doing so well. Just look at the past list, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. Like, they just weren't that great. So, for me to get hyped up about this movie, I was just like, I'm okay with probably never seeing it. Come to find out that when I first saw it, I was like, man, I'm really happy I saw this movie. And it was a movie that I bought day one when it came out on Blu-ray. Another good sign to this movie is that Stephen King liked it. And Stephen King is notorious for giving his opinion on his projects because, The Shining's the biggest example. He did not like that movie whatsoever. And so, the fact that he likes It, Chapter 1, is a great sign. I mean, why wouldn't you want the creator to like it? And I want to just double back real quick to that Stranger Things topic that I was going off about. I want to say that because of the success of Stranger Things, we got to see this movie. Because it showed that, one, there is a market for this type of movie where it's a bunch of kids fighting an interdimensional being. I mean, granted, you could say, like, there's plenty of examples of kids fighting something, like in Goonies and things of that sort. But no, I mean, this movie showed that there was an audience. And I do like the direction that they went with this movie. I mean, granted, it's a horror movie and there's really only so much direction that you could go in since it's already a book. So you really have to stick to that book. I'm not sure how closely it follows the book. I've never read it. So I could be wrong here. If you want to correct me, go ahead. But yeah, as far as I know, I mean, they did pretty good by the book. There is one scene, rightfully so, missing from the movie that I think we all know which scene that is. I'm not going to repeat it because Jesus Christ. But no, I mean, as far as the book goes, from what I hear, they follow pretty closely to it. And if they don't follow so closely to it, they manipulate it to make it work. And so this movie just works, like, in every aspect. The cast is great. The kids in this movie are fantastic. And I think what you see nowadays especially, you see this rise of kid actors who are just killing it. They are absolutely murdering it. And I think it's pretty surprising because the cast in this movie, the only one that you know is Finn Wolfhard. Other than that, all the other kids, I've never really seen any of them before. So for them to do this movie as their big jumping off point to stardom, I mean, it's perfect. They really got something good with this cast. The guy who plays It, Bill Skarsgård, I had never seen him in anything before. I know he was big in a TV show. We obviously know his brother, Alexander, who came out in shows like, I think, True Blood. Came out in that Tarzan movie. But this guy, Bill Skarsgård, he fucking kills it as Pennywise. And I think the only shining point of that 90s miniseries was Tim Curry as It. I mean, out of all the people in that movie or in that miniseries, that's who you remember the most. You remember Tim Curry as It. I mean, you might remember River Phoenix playing Bill. You might remember Seth Green playing Richie. You might remember John Ritter playing the older new kid, and Ben, the older Ben. But for the most part, everyone remembers Tim Curry as It. And I think that's what everyone was like super skeptical about when this first trailer came out, was Bill Skarsgård as It, because everyone romanticized the idea of Tim Curry as It. So when you see the new person, you're just like, he's not as fucking good as the other guy. And rightfully so. They are protective over things that they are naturally nostalgic for, so it's understandable. I mean, I was nostalgic about Tim Curry playing It, so when I saw this new guy playing, I was just like, okay, whatever, man. You're no Tim Curry. But no, this guy fucking kills it. And what this movie did, opposed to that miniseries, is that it was actually able to explore the grittiness of It. Because, I mean, you look back at the miniseries now, and you're just like, man, this is so campy. Like, all the stuff in this thing isn't scary whatsoever. Like, this movie, as far as scary goes, or as far as the element of horror goes, like, this movie has it. It has all of it. And I'm really happy to see what they did. Because that miniseries was so campy, they really had to up the violence, they really had to up the scares to really get people to buy into this. I think from a personal standpoint, I thought they did really well by doing that. I thought they did really well in upping that horror factor and just making this movie just very enjoyable. And again, like, I've told people who hate scary movies, they hate them because they're scary as hell. But I was like, look, man, this movie's not scary, like, at all. Like, I didn't find this movie scary at all. This movie's just really good. And you can attribute that to several factors. Stranger Things making this type of genre very accessible to people. You can also attribute it to several other things, like the fact that the cast is amazing. You could attribute it to that it's not a scary story. Like, there's not jump scares coming at you every 5 seconds. It's just an eerie feeling that's going throughout the movie. And it does bring up the point, like, so is that a good direction for horror movies to go in? Because that's what a lot of those stupid Oscar bait horror movies are doing now, like Hereditary, Midsummer, The Lodge. All those movies now, they're just these overly dramatic, overly boring fucking movies that just took the horror genre and made it like, I get it, horror has so many aspects to it. I just don't like that aspect. I think that aspect, I think it's boring. I think it's so boring. And I'm just like, man, I just want to see a decent horror movie now. I mean, think about it. All the genres are pretty much, well, not genres. All the big franchises of horror are pretty much gone. Slasher films, gone. Monster movies, pretty much gone. Paranormal movies, kind of there. I'd say that's pretty much the predominant one. And then now all you really have is these super boring fucking Oscar bait horror movies. And it's okay if you're into that, but I mean, yeah, like, what I like about this movie is that it's a nice little nod to just a very old school way of making a movie, and then you take a modern twist on it. I mean, for me, this movie was just great in every aspect. It's such a rewatchable movie for me. I can throw this movie on any time of day and I would be completely content with watching it from start to end. And not just from start to end, I mean, just watching this movie at any point, you get drawn in. So yeah, like, it brought back a lot of memories of just hanging out with my friends as a kid and things of that sort. So this movie, while it does have a monster in it, it does have that nostalgic feeling with it. I mean, for anyone that's afraid of horror movies, I would highly recommend this movie, because it's not a horror movie in the slightest. It's just a good fucking movie. But enough of me ranting. Let's just talk about some things I like about this movie. I really like the setting of this movie. I love the town that they filmed in. It really just brings you into that small town mentality that they're going for in the book. So automatically you're drawn in. The young cast kills it. I think one of the ones that does not get sung about enough is the kid who plays Bowers. Holy shit, does that kid do evil well. That guy is so horrible. He's the worst human being I've ever seen on camera. And he does it so well. I mean, from that kid to his henchmen, to the kids who portray the loser club, and then the Bill Skarsgård who plays it. Everyone from top to bottom, they really did take the time and effort to really get this cast down. And you really see it. Aside from that, the movie itself is just really well made. I do like how they do the individual scares for each child. Like, what scares them the most. Eddie's with the leper is fantastic. Beverly's with the blood is fantastic. Her father, who is so creepy, he should never have a child. Ever. Ben with the fucking library. I think the most obvious one is Stanley's with that crooked lady in his dad's office. Like, why do you have that painting, bro? Like, that painting just screams evil. I don't know what kind of psychopath carries that around on a daily and just like, that's a good piece of art. Like, that thing is horrible. Richie with the clown room, you get that nice little nod towards Tim Curry's It. You see the doll dressed as him. And Mike's horror was, that one was brutal. But what about the people burning alive? Jesus. And then you see It fucking in that meatpacking room hanging by a chain, which is terrifying. And then he gets, accosted by those racist kids led by Bowers. I mean, shit, from top to bottom, they really took a lot of time with making these horrors for these kids just really well done. Georgie, I remember seeing Georgie's arm getting ripped off in the very beginning. I was like, holy shit, they're really going for it. And I think that was a great way to set the tone, because you're just like, alright, this is going to be a rated R movie. I mean, you're going to see blood, you're going to see things happen. And so when they went with Georgie getting his arm ripped off, I was like, alright, I'm game for it. The horror house, amazing scene. Love that scene. For me, that is the most rewatchable scene in the whole movie. The first instance they go in that horror house where they're all like separated and attacked separately, where you see Eddie not fight, but get accosted by It. You see Richie and Bill meet Betty Ripsom, half of her at least. You see the clown room. You see Beverly pretty much become the strong one, and so she gets singled out by It. But that whole scene, that whole series of scenes is just really well done. The ending is really well done as well, when you see the losers finally step up and face their fears, because that's the only way they were going to beat them. Because if they didn't face their fears, that's how it wins. It runs on fear. So if they didn't face their fears, next thing you know, they lose. But man, just every scene in this movie took so much detail and so much care that you're just like, fuck, like they really took the time and effort to make this movie really well. And that's all I really want to say. Like, there's really not a lot to say about this movie. It's really just self-explanatory on how good it is. For me, it's one of my top 10 rewatchable movies. Like, it is so well done. This movie's gotten praise from everybody. The biggest praise that it really needed was the praise from Stephen King. And that's all it really needs. As far as that goes, I mean, it's a great movie. I don't want to say it's perfect. I don't think any movie's perfect. But as far as like just getting it down beat by beat, this movie just gets it down. I rewatched it right now, and I was just like, man, I forgot how like good this movie was. I forgot how enticing it is. I love the cast. Finn Wolfhard playing Richie was amazing, because you see him pretty much be a complete opposite character to who he played on Stranger Things. You see him be this smartass who just constantly cracks jokes. You see Eddie, who is just this nerd who gets constantly picked on. You see Stanley, again, another nerd who gets constantly picked on. Bill, who's a stuttering kid who just is trying to find his footing. Mike is a kid who lives on the outskirts of town and is just constantly being bullied. Ben, the new kid who likes new kids on the block. And Beverly, the girl who is constantly taunted about being something that she's not. So you see all these characters come together. You see them all face their fears. And it just works out in a really organic way, story-wise. As far as, like, realistically, come on, let's be honest, it's not a realistic movie. But no, I mean, yeah, like, that's what I wanted to say. I just really wanted to show my appreciation for this movie. I really like this movie. I thought this movie was amazing, especially from someone who thought it was going to be trash from the trailers. I really love this movie. So please, if you're not a horror fan, check it out. You're not going to be scared, I promise. And that's it, everybody. We have reached the end of the podcast. This is Fernando from The Rollback. Please check out our website. We have our written reviews there. We also have our link tree below that's going to take you to our Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Google, website, everywhere that you need to go to find us. It will take you there. So please check us out. Like, share, subscribe, share us with everybody. We're just a small podcast that likes to talk about movies. You get podcasts every Saturday and Wednesday. You get my Wednesday Rewind, and then you're also going to get the normal Saturday ones. So, check us out. Again, this is Fernando from The Rollback. Cut it.